Hello, friends. It is July 6, 2021, and welcome to another episode of Nuts and Bolts MMA, where you get the nuts and bolts of what's going on inside the world of MMA. I am your host, Travis Montgomery. I thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone is doing well. We just celebrated July 4th here in the States. I had a good time with my son. Shout out again to my ex-wife for letting me have him. We spent the day with his cousin, who is my niece's daughter, and they just get along so good. I can't get enough of those two. They live actually in the IE, and I live in Bakersfield, and then we come here to actually in Orange County to meet up. And it's just such a joy to watch. It took 4 hours to get back to Bakersfield from Orange County. They diverted me from the 5 to the 101. And as my co-host here can tell you, the 101 can be the gates of hell. But here I am joined again by Nikki B. We are going to be breaking down some news because we have a big fight card, UFC 264. We're going to have another episode this week to just focus solely on the preview for UFC 264. But Nikki B, how was your 4th of July and how are you doing?
4th was good, man. Saw the fam, barbecued, did some asada and kind of like taco style. Chilled, watched some, stupid loud movies and had a good time, man.
Were the pups all right?
She was okay. She gets a different cocktail of drugs, during fireworks season. So she handled it better than she has in the past.
Yeah, it's weird how some dogs they just handle it, and then some get all freaked out. Is your dog older or younger?
She's 10, so she's on the older side now. I've looked into like getting her like earmuffs or something, but she doesn't really like things on her head, so I don't know how she would deal with that. So it's mostly like tranquilizers and CBD.
Oh, the CBD works.
It's worked pretty well, yeah.
We might be joined by Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, coming up here, but he had some scheduling issues. Rob might jump in too, but for now, me and Nick are just going to pick up the slack to get into some of this news and some of these fight announcements. And for now, we will bring you some news. Okay, UFC 264 is this weekend, and Phil Hawes versus Darren Wynn is off. And that's probably a good thing for Darren Wynn because he was probably about to get steamrolled. But I will read you what was posted on Philip Hawes' IG, I think it was. Fights canceled. Darren Wynn hurt his rib. Wish you a speedy recovery. Thumbs up. I want to thank my team for helping me prepare. Sanford MMA. Yeah, Darren Wynn was in for a world of hurt. What was that? You're about to enter a world of pain. I forget what that quote is from.
It's not ringing any bells for me right now.
It's from a comedy movie. Anyways, we'll move on. So that one is off the table. I guess we'll leave with that because 264 is coming up this weekend. I don't know. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I'd like to see Hawes fight again, but I think this was announced like a day or two ago. So finding someone on super short notice, super unlikely. Might as well just reschedule if they can, or find another opponent for one of the next cards that's a little bit thinner. And this card is pretty deep, especially in the main card. So losing this fight isn't a huge blow to this card overall. So
yeah,
we could see both guys healthy. Maybe that fight gets rescheduled in a month or two down the line.
Yeah, it's still early in the week. So, I mean, hopefully this is the only fight cancellation that we have. But with COVID and the injury bug this year.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yes. Well, I'll transition into a middleweight bout that was announced because Kyle Dukakis is going to fight Kevin Holland on a fight night card on October 2nd. That's a good transition because Phil Hawes just beat Kyle Dukakis And I was, I think I actually bet Kyle as an underdog there. It was just kind of like a Hail Mary. I think the odds indicated something different. And a lot of people think that this is a slam dunk for Kevin Holland, but I'm not really sure about that. Do you have any thoughts about this matchup?
I mean, you would think that Holland should win this fight because he's been fighting a little bit higher up the ladder than Dawkins has recently. So, I mean, it depends. Like, if he goes into the fight overconfident, that's never a good thing. But he's been training at a AKA, so there's probably some new tricks up his sleeve that he wants to see. And from what I've seen of Dawkins, he's kind of like a methodical, like slow-paced fighter. Um, so I think if they're going to fight at that pace, it probably favors Holland. And he's got the reach advantage. And like I said, he's been fighting the better competition lately. And he lost the same way twice in a row. So if he can, fix that problem and make the fight his, you would have to favor Holland, I think, in the fight.
Right. And Kyle Dukakis does have a lot of subs on his record, but he's not like a wrestle heavy. He doesn't have that collegiate background. I don't think I was actually trying to look it up and see if he had like Division I or something like that, because that's who's going to give Kevin Holland problems, as we've seen.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything like that. So
no, it seems like he's better on the ground than the guys he's fought when the fight gets there. But in a fight where he's most likely going to have to force the issue with the takedown and Holland's going to know that it's coming, that's a harder situation to get that fight to the ground and get a submission. And Holland didn't get submitted by the guys that held him down for, 25 minutes either. So unless Dawkins is surprisingly a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, then I don't see him really submitting Holland. He could potentially still get him down and control him, but what is Holland at AKA for if not to stop that from happening? So if Kevin Holland comes out and loses the fight and gets controlled on the ground, like, he's really got to figure something out, because that will be 3 fights in a row and he switched camps to work on that. So
yeah,
I expect him to win.
Yeah, so do I. And I think the UFC does too, but it just seems unfortunate and sad when he loses, because he looks like he's got tremendous talent, tremendous ceiling, and it's unfortunate when someone doesn't fulfill their whole capabilities, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Eve Edwards on Twitter about it, and he was just, he's like looking at the potential of Kevin Holland as well, and kind of pointing out that, like, look, he's still super young. I think he's only like 24.
Yeah.
So he could spend an entire year just kind of refining his takedown defense and maybe his sweep game from the bottom, or working to get to the fence and just work his stand-ups from the ground. And he'll still possess all of his striking skills. So I think the future is still bright for Holland. It just, he got pushed up the ladder really quickly after the win over Jacare. And maybe if he doesn't land that knockout there on Jacare, maybe that fight goes the same way as all the other ones where he was on his back. So I see Kevin Holland rebounding, getting the win here, and then he's probably got to fight someone still outside the top 15 or maybe right on the border. So
yeah, I've said it before, and it's what does Kevin Holland want? What does he want? Because when he was on JRE, he has no problem just smoking blunts before practice and just going in like lackadaisical, like kind of whatever happens, happens. He doesn't have that championship mentality. He's not like a Khabib, where it's just grind 100%. His whole focus was the title and being the best. I think Kevin Holland's out there to have fun. We've seen that in between rounds and even in the cage antics, and it's all entertaining. It's fun. I appreciate it. But what does he want? That's something that I think Kevin Holland's going to have to figure out for himself, because the potential is there.
Yeah, and he's toyed with the idea of going down to 172. So it was kind of, I don't know. I don't feel that he's been really crushed by any of the guys at 185 recently. It's like, yeah, he got one-sidedly beat and held down, and just shown that his skill set that he's bringing into 185 just isn't going to be good enough to beat the upper echelon guys more often than not. But by going down to 170, it's like you're going to be a huge 170 fighter. And I mean, there's some money fights there, but realistically, the top of the food chain is going to wrestle you there too. So I don't know. I think he needed to maybe get a change of scenery, and I hope AKA helps with that because they have some good minds and some championship level guys over there. So I think that can correct a lot for him.
Yeah, speaking of middleweight prospects, and I guess going back a little bit, if he could make welterweight, I think he's much more exciting there because these big marauders like Derek Brunson and Marvin Vittori, I mean, I think they would still do that to him again, maybe forever. But Edmund Shabazian has been out there training with the Dagestanis. I don't know if you saw that, but that's a good thing for him because I was really high on Edmund Shabazian too, talking about, Derek Brunson taking out these younger folks. I wonder what he's up to these days. He doesn't have a fight booked
Brunson,
yet.
yeah, he's been pretty active on Twitter the last few weeks. It's like I kind of go dating back to the Anderson Silva boxing match, maybe. So I don't know, more vocal than I've seen him on Twitter lately. I don't know what he wants to do either. So
Oh, he's definitely in line for a top 5 opponent. I mean,
yeah,
he's right
for sure.
there.
He's been there for what, 5 years at least, maybe 4 or 5 years. He's been at the peak, maybe not quite at the top, but he's in the conversation.
Yeah, he got knocked out by Izzy, and then I think since then he's been pretty successful. Anyways, we'll move on to a guaranteed violence fight that was just announced yesterday on July 5th. We have Edson Barboza versus Giga Chikadze for August 28th. I don't think the venue has been determined yet. Let me look at that real quick. But your first thoughts when you heard this matchup, how do you see this one going?
I'm excited for that one. I mean, Edson looked good against Shane Burgos, right? And Giga looked really good against, was it Cub? And are they fighting at 135 or 145?
145.
Okay, so I think Edson's probably the bigger guy naturally, but Giga's pretty tall for that weight class. Barbosa just carries his musculature a little bit better. But I'm interested to see that fight because both these guys are going to throw a lot of kicks. There's going to be a lot of, high power leg strikes being thrown in that fight to the head, to the body, to the legs. And if Barbosa can survive the liver kick, maybe he's got the better kickboxing game overall. Although Giga, has been a high level kickboxer for a long time. So I would tend to favor him in the kickboxing. He's just been fighting MMA for a shorter period of time. So I don't know. I don't think either guy is going to look to take that fight to the ground. So that is going to be contested almost entirely at kickboxing range. Should be a great fight, though.
Yeah, it's going to be a stand-up kickboxing match, which I favor Giga in this match, especially the odds opened up a couple hours ago. He's a plus 130 underdog. So I'm going to be taking that one. I don't know when, but that's going to be a bet for me because I think that the fight takes place on the feet. I feel Giga is a better kickboxer, and Barboza's kind of gotten away from using his kicks, and especially his leg kicks, which is kind of confusing. Jose Aldo, kind of, you can say the same thing about him in that.
They are similar, yeah. I think he used his leg kicks pretty well against Burgos in the last fight, but Barbosa likes to throw power shots. He doesn't throw curveballs or changeups or anything off speed. He's a fastball pitcher all the way. And I think the longer the fight goes, the more it favors Giga because if Barbosa can't stop him, he's going to be just dumping high energy strikes the entire 10 minutes going into the third round. And Giga's a little bit more selective, a little bit more strategic, I would say, with his approach. So I think we saw it in the Gaethje fight too, where Barbosa looked really good early in the fight, but having to fight that fight is exhausting. And if you don't stop your opponent and your opponent is a high level striker as well, you pay for that on the back end of the fight. So I could see that going to decision. I would say split decision is probably the most likely outcome for that fight, because the middle of that fight's going to be these two guys probably going to war, and it's really going to be the judges seeing like, okay, who did a little bit more this round. If either guy gets stopped, it'll be exciting. I just, I don't see it.
Right. And it's a theme in this sport that I like to keep my eye on, where the young eat the old. The young lions will eat the old lions in this sport. And I'm not calling Barboza old by age, but he is up there in fight years at this point.
Yeah, and it's just like, he came down to 145 because, he was maxing out like his size to go down a weight class. But Giga's 6 feet, 6'1". So you're not even getting the size advantage that you would normally have. So he's going to be punching uphill and like throwing power hooks uphill. Not necessarily a good strategy for energy conservation down the stretch. We'll see. If anybody stops it, I think maybe Giga stops it in third round. But I want to see that go 15 minutes, and I want a nice, intriguing kickboxing battle.
When have we seen Cubs stop like that?
I agree. Yeah, you got to watch out for that body shot.
I think this dude is special, and I'm going to be backing him on this card that will be taking place. It's UFC Fight Night 192, August 28th. We also have other notable bouts. Sean Brady versus Kevin Lee. That's a rescheduled bout that was supposed to happen this weekend. So actually, we've lost 2.
Okay.
Fights.
Yeah, that fight got canceled like a couple weeks ago, right?
It did, but we're keeping track here. Dustin Jacoby versus Darren Stewart was also announced. I think it was 2 days ago. Sarah McMahon versus Caitlin Vieira, Gerald Marchart versus Mahmoud Muradov. There's some other ones on there.
It's a fight night, you said, 192?
Yeah, Tracy Cortez versus JJ Aldrich. That should be fun as far as women's MMA is concerned, which I'm not too impressed with as of late. But
there was that women's fight that was announced, Tatiana.
Yes, yeah. Since we're talking about WMMA, Roxanne Modaffari will fight Tatiana Suarez at UFC 266. Now, Roxanne just keeps coming through in these crazy underdog situations, but I have a hard time believing that she's gonna be able to get away with this one.
It's a bad matchup for her.
Yeah, Tatiana. She's been dealing with a crazy neck injury. I think it is. It's an injury of some sort. I believe it's her neck, which is always, dangerous. And that's why I don't really fault the Peter Yan versus Aljo Sterling, because Aljo had to have surgery on his neck. He actually should have had it before his fight. But, Aljo might be playing it up a little bit, but it's a neck injury, so you can't really pass that much judgment on him, right?
No, I don't. I mean, a lot of people, giving out like Oscars and stuff for Sterling, but, I've watched Aljo's like whole career. I don't know. Was he playing it up? Maybe, but he also got blasted in the face with a knee that he wasn't prepared to defend. So him being out of it in that situation is completely understandable. Like, imagine that's a legal knee. Like, the fight's over right there, right? I mean, maybe Jan comes in and throws 1 or 2 more strikes, but if he blasts him in the face at that distance, the fight is basically going to be stopped by the referee not too shortly after that. So to think that, Sterling was completely coherent during all of that afterwards is, a little weird, but.
Yeah. And the argument goes both ways to be like, well, Peter Yan was dominating him and he was fucking him up. Well, yeah, to be nearly finished and then hit with an illegal knee like that, that will send you over, over your limit of, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of people from the outside looking in are like, oh, he needs to continue in that situation, or like he's not a real fighter, yada yada. And it's like, this guy's been fighting a long time. He's he's been in the UFC for a decade almost at this point. and to finally make it to the title fight and to win on a technicality, it's like I'm sure he's happy to have like the championship money in the end, but it seems like a too calculated of a decision when you're just on the receiving end of that knee. Like I think it was Herb Dean who ref that one too. Had he come in and just, hey, what's up, Adam? Had Herb Dean come in and told him what the verdict of the fight was going to be, which I don't think he did in watching it, then I could understand. Like, then he has some data to like calculate the decision based on. But to be blasted in the face with a knee and then be on the canvas recovering and be like, should I take the loss and just go to the scorecards now, or am I going to win the title by DQ? That just seems like such a hard conversation to have internally in that moment. That's why I don't think he did.
Why? So you can please the MMA fans on Twitter that don't like you anyways? I mean, it's a career move. You're going to be champion. You're going to get pay-per-view points. You're going to get paid more. It's a career move. I would have done the same thing and put two middle fingers up to anyone who had anything negative to say about it. But let's welcome back to the show now, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. How's it going?
What's up, everybody? It's going good. It's doing good. How's things going with you today, Trav?
It's good. It's good to see you again.
Awesome. And how about you, Nick? How's things going with you?
Everything's good, man. I'm glad you survived Chipotle.
Thank you. That was quite a tool, wasn't it?
Don't count your ducks before they hatch or whatever, because you never know if you're going to get that crazy E. coli.
Here's the hoping. Every day I wake up, it's above ground. It's a good day. It's like, hey, here you go, still here.
I love it. All right, so we talked about Phil Hawes and Darren Wynn. It's off of this card, which I was looking forward to seeing Phil Hawes perform again. But the two big fight announcements is Edson Barboza versus Giga Chikadze and Kevin Holland versus Kyle Dukakis. Do you have any thoughts on those two fights?
Yes, real quick. I'll start with the first one you mentioned. Edson, we all remember him and Shane Burgos. That fight is going to be etched in everyone's memory. And Giga also had a pretty impressive last showing when he knocked out Cobb with that liver kick that he wants to patent as the Giga kick now. So both are coming off impressive, very memorable finishes. If I had to give the edge in this one, setting the line, I would probably set it at like minus 150 Edson because of his UFC experience and everything.
The odds came out today.
Oh, really? What are they?
Giga's plus 130, and I think you're right. It's minus 150 for Edson.
Yeah, that's where I would.
So you are
this is a very fair line. Thank you. I'm trying to be good at this. So it'll take like a week or so. I'll see just how it moves on which side, and value will be created based on these starting numbers. See which one gets wider.
Oh, hold on now. So one book has released it. It did open at minus 150. It has been bet down to a pick'em now. So the money's coming in on Giga. So you can't get that plus 130 anymore.
Yeah, no. People are pouring money in on Giga. And then in that case, then right now would be a good time to put an even money bet on Edson, because it's a fight I see going both ways, So if you can get plus or even money and you can talk yourself into why it could win, that's the definition of a good bet. That's the whole thing about trusting the process, and just keep doing that over and over again and you hit a winner. But yeah, let's to move on to the next one. Kevin and Dawkins, like, just call it what it is. It's a bounce back fight. Here you've had two losses against ranked guys. Here's a guy who has the same skill set, wants to do the same types of things as you, but you have these physical advantages in height and reach and quickness and all that. So you should win this fight. And also it will be impressive to see if he's picked up anything, because his last loss, I believe, was in April, and then he moved to AKA shortly after. So if DC and gang over there in California can turn Kevin Holland into some kind of, wrestling, just capable guy, doesn't even have
let me stop you real quick. Dawkins doesn't have a collegiate wrestling background, does he? I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't find anything.
I do not see one for him. No,
but he does have a lot of subs, but he's more like a jiu-jitsu player.
Yes, that would be correct.
Which I think that matchup is going to favor Kevin Holland as long as he can't wrestle fuck him like Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson did.
Yeah. So I think Kevin wins that fight by knockout, first or second round. But we'll see it when we get there. We'll talk about it when we get there.
I think we are all hoping that Kevin Holland wins that fight because he's so fun and he's so entertaining. It's just
Mhm.
you know, you almost felt like he could have won the Derek Brunson fight if he would just have done a couple. If he would have just got his shit together a little bit. Can't really put my finger on it.
Here's what I'll say. If he showed the same level of wrestling defense against Brunson that he showed against Vettori a couple weeks later, he probably would have beat Bronson or at least made it a little closer, giving himself a chance to strike. Like, he just wasn't taking it serious at all. It's like, okay, you're trying to wrestle me. Is this what you do for the whole fight? And then before you know, you're in the fourth and fifth round, you're like, oh, it is what he's doing for the whole fight. I need a finish or I've lost, so.
Okay. Yep. Roxanne Modafferi versus Tatiana Suarez. Roxanne has come through as a big underdog recently, but I don't think she's gonna.
Did they release the odds for that fight? It's got to be plus 250 or,
No, she's gonna be plus 300, plus 400 probably. It has not been released yet.
And honestly, it seems like this is what Roxanne's role in the UFC is now, the whole litmus test for young, undefeated, young, unbeaten talent. Like, do you got it or do you don't? Like, I mean, now the last fight with Macy Barber, that was like, it was an injury. Injuries happen to anyone. And it was sad that she went out that way, blew her knee. But like, Roxanne, the same way you can't take that away from her. It's in the books as a TKO victory for Roxanne Modafferi. So that's just what it is. Like, I don't think she has enough to do it again, especially as she's age, she isn't as young as she was. And fighters, especially WMMA too, once you get over that certain uh age, it just goes. Like, you don't have it anymore, which is interesting, considering Amanda Nunes is in her 30s now. And I'm like, will she fade? Is there a reckoning coming for her at any time soon? That might be a foreshadowing to our next pay-per-view card. But yeah, I may have tipped my hand with how I lean on that one.
So as I'm looking at best fight odds right now, Darren Wynn versus Phil Hawes has been rescheduled for July 17th. That is the Makhachev versus Moises card. I'm excited to see Makhachev again. That's also the card that Misha Tate is on. So we'll have some fun talking about that one. So maybe it's rescheduled. So keeping in the nature of the news, what do you guys think about the Colby Covington video that was released today? There's been a lot of stuff on Twitter today. You know what? Let's just call it Twitter beef.
That's fair.
Yeah, it was a banner day on the bird. That's for sure. A lot of news broke. Like, Colby is just an agitator, man. You know how he is. He loves getting his name in the news, and he loves doing that by making an enemy out of someone or by antagonizing someone or something. So it's like, right now he is waiting for the fight to be announced with Usman, if that does get announced or anything. But now he's like, okay, I'm gonna show you guys that Dustin Poirier is a bad guy. Like, and here's this video of UFC fighter sparring against non-UFC competition, and it went exactly how you'd expect it to go. So like, what is it? I first of all didn't even understand how the outrage came about, and when it did, I still didn't understand, like, why should I be mad about this? Like, this guy, I'm sure, is getting paid for his time and any injuries sustained. Like, Dustin isn't doing anything wrong here. Or do I have that misunderstood?
No, you're not, because especially in their camp, they spar hard. And, some camps don't spar at all, but everyone does things differently. And when you spar, people get dropped. It wasn't, I don't think it wasn't that egregious. It's not like he followed him to the ground and was throwing elbows on his head. these things happen when you spar. That's how you get better at fighting. Is you spar. Nikki B, what do you think about the situation?
It was horribly blown out of proportion. The first comment I think that came out about it, I don't even remember who it was that, poked at Dustin for doing this. But the way that the initial comments about this incident happening came out was that like Dustin had flatlined this guy and stood over his unconscious body screaming like "and new" in his face. And that's not at all what happened. He hit him with a clean right hand. He could see the guy was hurt, so the guy kind of went to the fence and went down. Dustin, like you said, didn't chase him up, didn't hit him with anything against the fence, kind of walked away. And that whole "and new" comment came, 10, 15 seconds afterwards. And he wasn't in the guy's face about it either. So he's sparring, I think, for Khabib in that video, and he needs to be mentally prepared. So I don't see anything wrong with it. And if Colby's really like pointing to that as that's going to be the catalyst to make all of, the UFC public turn on Dustin for that reason, like I don't see it happening. It just makes Colby look like a bigger ass than he already is.
Yeah, he's an agitator. There might be a fight between those two sometime in the future. I think that would be fun.
Well, Dustin has flirted with going up to 170. So like with this fight with McGregor on the horizon, it's interesting because it's not a must win for Dustin, right? Like,
wait, what do you mean? He's fighting who?
Dustin's fighting Connor coming up, right?
Oh, he is? I'm just kidding.
With that fight on the horizon, like I don't think it's a must win for Poirier in that fight. Like he's already established himself as a top draw in the UFC. Like he's not Connor, but he already beat Connor, so he's got that under his belt, and you can't take that away from him. He knocked Connor out too, so like that will always be there regardless of what happens in the trilogy. And Dustin's talked about moving up to 170, so I don't blame Colby for maybe planting the seeds of like, if I don't get the Usman fight, or if I lose to Usman and I want another big fight and I really don't want to fight Masvidal, when Dustin comes up to 170 after the Connor fight, then maybe I can get that fight. Because realistically, maybe Dustin, if he beats Connor, he fights for the title. If he loses, he moves up to 170. If he wins, he maybe moves up to 172 because he will have already fought everybody at 155 at that point.
Yeah, and made as much money as he wants to.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't want to cut that weight anymore. And if he did that, he would be one of the only people to fight in 3 different weight categories in the UFC.
Yeah, I was just talking recently with someone who's actually at his camp there at ATT, and they're like, on fight day, sometimes Dustin pretty much walks in at middleweight. So he's cutting like crazy to get down there. So 70, will let him fight out his later years. Like, and to be honest, that's not the Shark Tank that 55 is. He can climb up the rockets again, and that'll be a fresh competition for Kamaru. Say he goes in there and beats 2 people, and in 12 months, by this time next year, we could be talking about Usman versus Poirier. Like that would be a great fight to watch, So.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they announce Usman versus Nate Diaz, because the UFC has just kind of been on like president of the Nate Diaz fan club agrees.
That's right.
Well, keeping into the nature of Twitter beef, we had Conor McGregor a couple days ago. He's been active going after Dustin. So a couple things here. I got to stop smacking before I talk. Anyways, Dustin Poirier responds to one of Conor McGregor's tweets with a twist of his own. Quote, "How about the first one to get a takedown is a dusty bitch. This is mixed martial arts. Put it all together. It reeks of insecurity to me." Dustin Poirier, in response to Conor McGregor's suggesting on Twitter that the first one to shoot at UFC 264 would be a dusty bitch. Conor McGregor responds to the response with, "Quick take for you and your team, pal. You's got poked around in the clinch. Elbows, knees, shoulders, fists. Looking outside the cage for advice. Hashtag striker turned wrestler. Hashtag Dusty Beach. Yeah, Conor McGregor is going after him. And he also, so you guys want to, he shot on Nate Diaz. So he must have forgotten when he got rocked that he went for a takedown against Nate Diaz, which is like
He
not in
was
his
going for a
wheelhouse.
takedown on Dustin too. Right when he leaned into that like right hook that put him down, he was shooting.
Yeah, we'll get into this one in the next episode. I'm reserving all my thoughts for that one.
The most recent thing I saw was that Conor posted like a message on Instagram from there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Give it to us, Trav.
Julie Poirier, I think, tried to message Conor McGregor on Instagram. Is that how you're reading this?
That's what it looks like.
And
Yeah,
it's probably
neither of them follow each other, and she tried to reach out to him in the Instagram DMs, and he hadn't even accepted it yet. But he took a screenshot of it, basically to show like, "Hey, look, she's trying to get in my DMs, man, and I don't even follow her."
By the way,
childish stuff like that. But that's
how fine is Jolie Poirier? By the way, Jesus Christ.
ESPN banner just came to my phone that Dana officially said, the winner of the fight Saturday night fights Oliveira next. But we knew that already.
Yeah, we kind of knew that.
Thanks, Dana.
Yeah, and the grass is green and the sky is blue. But so I think this is probably for the charity thing that we could speculate that's why Julie is DMing Conor.
It's not why Conor's posting it though.
And then Conor does this video. You guys see that thing too?
The whispering of like the audio recording on Twitter.
Yeah. Actually can't find it anymore. Maybe he took it down. No, he didn't. All right. Well, we'll just play it real quick for you guys. It's super weird and kind of dumb.
I swear, Conor cuts promos like a pro wrestler or something, man. Like
coming for you, P-head. Silly hillbilly.
Silly hillbilly. All right. You potato farmer. Just kidding. Yeah, so Conor McGregor is doing his thing. And I don't want to get too far into it, but this does feel a little different than their rematch. This is the trilogy. The rematch seemed like they were kind of respectful, kind of cordial, but this is going a different route, obviously.
Yeah, this is a lot more personal now. And I was listening to something right after Conor lost in January that said that like he's just at his best. Like some people weirdly need that anger, chaos, or whatever you want to call it to function. And Conor appears to be one of those guys. For him to be peak optimal, he has to play that character, although he may have moved past it as a man, as a father now, and maybe be respectful as a person in real life. But he's like, I have to be this guy going into fight camp. That's how he has to be notorious essentially and do the things that notorious would do. So like, I don't know, it's good. Let's see. It worked the first time around. The second time it didn't work. Let's see if it'll work this time. That's why we have the trilogy.
Yeah, the Kumbaya stuff obviously didn't work too well for Conor in the second fight. So, he's going back to try to get into the psychological warfare and make Dustin fight angry a little bit. Because Conor's such a good counter striker that Dustin basically took that away from him in the second fight with the calf kick, right? He made Conor have to come forward and hunt. And that's a fight that's much more in line with how Dustin likes to fight, where they're going to like go at each other and Dustin will win the war of attrition more often than not. And he's shown that over and over and over again. So, maybe this is Conor trying to get him a little heated, trying to make Dustin come and seek the knockout early so Conor can land some counters.
Yeah.
Stay tuned this week for more UFC 264 breakdowns because there's a lot of good fights on this card and we will be talking about it. Moving on though, Ariel Helwani posted on his Instagram saying that he spoke to Jorge Masvidal's manager, Abraham Abraham Kawa about what's next for Masvidal. He said Masvidal is targeting a return in October/November against either Nick Diaz or Colby Covington. So Nick Diaz has not fought in 8 years. Why would he fight Jorge Masvidal, Nick?
Why not? I mean, if Nick Diaz really wants to come back, like, you might as well take the fight against a guy who wants to fight you, because I think there's mutual respect between them as the kind of fighters that they are. If Nick's come in and just looking to collect, paychecks against whoever the UFC wants to give him, then that's one way to go. But I think Nick's like 37, if I'm not mistaken. So he doesn't have a ton of time left to like make a splash in his return. So you might as well go for somebody who has name recognition, who has a huge following, who you could maybe headline a pay-per-view against. They probably won't do it, but you could theoretically do that. Plus, you got the storyline with the little brother getting beaten. I don't know. Honestly, like Nick Diaz in his prime, I like that matchup. Whether or not Nick is in the same place mentally and physically that he needs to be to fight Masvidal now, that's a question that we won't know unless the fight happens. But when his skills are all put together, I think Nick has a lot of advantages in that fight. I mean, Jorge's got some too, obviously, but I don't see it as a landslide at all.
Adam, do you have any thoughts on who Jorge Masvidal should fight next?
Yeah, I mean, Jorge is in a very, very unique career path right now. And very few UFC fighters have had this, your last two fights being title shot defeats. Like, you either have to change division or change promotion. He did neither. He's still staying where he is. So all he has left to him right now are like money fights against like big name people, or maybe even like a decent ranked fight to be like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still around. And then do that for the rest of his career until his contract runs out and the organization decides to move in a different direction, or like hope that the champion who's beaten him 2 times leaves that division somehow. And then he's like, hey, I'm right here, get me a title shot. And it's just like, it's a strange existence to have. So that's why I feel the Diaz fight, if it materializes in the fall, would be a good one for him. It would definitely be something welcome. The UFC has a storyline to sell regardless of how that goes. And I do agree with you, Nick. That could lead a card off, be the main event, or maybe the co-main on a stacked like fall card or something. Like, everyone wants to see a Diaz fight. Everyone wants to see Jorge fight. You put them, that's a main event. You put them next to each other, that's a main event. That's gonna
Yeah,
sell
for
itself.
sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
Diaz versus Masvidal. That's gonna sell itself right there. So yeah, I feel it's something that if both sides agree to it, they want to do. It's a win-win-win for like whoever gets their hand raised at the end of the night, I'd say. So yeah.
Yeah, they all get paid. And realistically, I think you're looking at Jorge's got 3 realistic options, right? Colby Covington, Leon Edwards, and Nick Diaz. Like, Nick's in the conversation because he's got name and following and there's going to be money there. Leon's in the conversation because of the rank and because he's not getting the title fight, neither is Masvidal. So they're left to fend for it for #1 contender, basically. And then there's Colby, who, if he doesn't get the title fight against Usman, then that's the only fight remaining is Masvidal. Plus, there's bad blood there. There's a good storyline there. And I do want to see that fight, but I will never be upset if Nick Diaz signs that contract and they, headline a pay-per-view later this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a tricky thing. I think Leon Edwards makes the most sense out of all of it because they do have that storyline with the 3-piece and the soda. Leon Edwards, he's up there in the rankings, but what does a win for Jorge Masvidal over Leon Edwards do for him? I guess not much, but like Adam said, he's lost 2 title fights in a row. So the only thing that's left is money fights. But from a rankings standpoint, Leon Edwards, I think, makes the most sense. And why is Colby Covington mentioned when, I mean, the rumored bout and what's supposed to happen next is Colby Covington versus Usman 2. So
where's the contract? Where's the date for that fight?
I know. Yeah, it's weird. I'm starting to get like they're gonna do some. I'm starting to get the feeling the UFC is gonna do something crazy, like they did with Francis, or something. I don't know.
Well, hopefully not, because I want to see Kamara fight while he's the champ and while he's on top of the mountain. Like, you don't get too many guys like this that come along and have the opportunity to like hold a division hostage by dominance. So it's exciting to see, and I don't want to see that wasted.
Yeah, and I'm also waiting on Rafael Fiziev to get his next fight. When's he gonna get another fight? Because that dude is a destroyer.
Yeah, I don't know. What is his last fight against Moicano?
It was against Mark Diakase.
Oh, Jacasey, yeah. Oh, that's right.
Which brings us to our last bit of news. Mark Diakase was just announced yesterday. He'll fight Rafael Alves at UFC event on September 4th, which is a good card. And, Diakase, in my head, when I think about him, I think of like this kind of like knockout artist, but he's really not. He has a lot of decision wins, and he's a lost. He lost 3 in a row, but that was to Dakar Close, Dan Hooker, and Nasrat Hapkrast, which is no shame in that. Those guys would probably knock my block off in 2 seconds. He is from the Democratic Republic of Congo, but fighting out of England. We would like to see him do well. And I think that will about cover it until we can really dive into UFC 264.
Yeah, Jacasey's fun to watch. Honestly, like that should be an entertaining fight.
Well, his knockout versus Timu Packlin was crazy. It was a 30-second dismantling.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Jacasey doesn't have like one punch knockout power because we've seen it. It's just like the higher you go up the ladder, the harder it is to get those kind of finishes against, top tier opponents. So we've seen that a little bit. Like he struggled since coming to the UFC, but he's super entertaining to watch. So I'm down to watch him fight pretty much whenever.
Truth. Okay, Adam, do you have any shout outs, and where can people find you on social media?
Oh, for sure. So I just want to say big shout out to America. We just went past Independence Day. It's always one of my favorite times of year because, like, regardless of how things are going on in this country as a whole, man, like, you just get to that one time where everyone's united and, celebrating and living their best life, essentially, and it's like we could be that way 365 days a year, but like, people just don't see eye to eye regarding some things. Well, all things considered, yeah, like, I had a great Independence Day weekend. That's really what I'm thinking about now. I can't wait to get into the card on Saturday and then the reaction show after that. Like, we will be having a live Twitter spaces for the undercard. Someone's going to host it and we'll tweet it out if you guys want to join and just talk through the prelims with us before we get to the pay-per-view portion of the night. That would be a great thing to do on Saturday as well.
I'm thinking about doing a fight companion this Saturday.
Yeah, something like that.
And I'll post the Zoom in our chat and in the other chat, and we'll just see what happens.
Awesome. Yeah, that's it.
But you're right. And I don't know if you were here for 9/11, but after 9/11, there was like kind of a sense of unity that everyone put our.
Before. I was young when that happened. I was like 9. That was 20 years ago. Yeah, I was 9. What am I saying? I'll be 29 this year. So I was 9. Yeah, I was 9 years old, and I don't remember too much, but the little I remember is like unity like never before.
And what came of 9/11 is completely disgusting, but we won't go into that right now. Nikki B, where can people find you on social media, and do you have a shout out?
Yeah, you can find me. Nick Shiesty is the handle basically on all the social media platforms that I do have. I'm going to give a shout out to my co-president of the Diaz Brothers fan club, Rob, wherever he is right now. He's in Stockton right now. hanging out with the Diaz boys. Who knows? But he couldn't join us today, so we'll shout him out.
He's passing out microdoses of psilocybin mushrooms and making the world better for it. I am
Man.
at Ash One MMA, and I will give a shout out to my dad today, who turned 75.
Hey, happy birthday to
Happy
your dad.
birthday.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And on that note, we will be out. And for everyone else, step your game up.